Dr. M. Suresh Gandhi is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Geology. He had also served as a faculty for the Center for Natural Hazards and Disaster Studies at University of Madras. He had completed his PhD in Geology, Micropaleontology at Tamil University, Tanjavur. He has specialized in marine micropaleontology and sedimentology. He has 12 years of teaching experience in geology, environmental geology, and natural hazards. He had received DST Young Scientist Award for the year 2004 to 2008. He is a member for Past Global Changes Switzerland and life member in Gondwana Geological Magazine Nagpur. He had presented more than 50 papers in national and international level seminars and conferences. He had published 40 papers in the reputed national and international journals. He had organized 10 national and international seminars. He has published 2 books on cyclones and heavy minerals. He had completed 7 major research projects funded by UGC, DST and DOD.
Welcome to UGC lecture series, and today I am going to take a lecture on disaster management part 2. So, in this lecture I am going to deal with what are the disasters. After the disaster we have know about the up to vulnerability, all of you know, and then in this lecture I am going to deal with capacity and the risk managements and also disaster risk managements, how to prepare the disaster, what is the pre-disaster, what you mean by post-disaster, like that with few examples. So, in this, after the vulnerability means what are the disasters, all of you know that earthquake, volcano, tsunami, landslide, like that. Then once disaster occurred, we have a vulnerability. So, once the vulnerability is occurred, first what we have to do means we have to do some rehabilitation. So, rehabilitation we have to do with the help of government and also by the NGOs. So, once the earthquake occurred or even tsunami occurred, so what people do, they have no food, they have no shelter, they have no proper communications. So, for all this first aid, like a first aid, we need to rehabilitate, we have give some support, we have do some help to that people. So, for that we need rehabilitation. So, I will show the rehabilitation means that is mostly done by the peoples and also by NGOs and also by the governments. So, again they have to recover from the disaster. Then what is the capacity? Capacity is nothing but the resources, means and strength which exist in households and communities and which enable them to cope with or withstand, prepare or prevent or mitigate or quickly recover from the disaster. So, more or less after the rehabilitation there is a capacity, how much capacity is there to prevent more quickly from that event. So, that is called capacity. Again there is a 2 type of capacities there, one is called physical capacity and another one is called socio-economic capacity. For physical capacity means people whose house has been destroyed by the cyclone or crops have been destroyed by the flood, that can salvage things from their homes, from their farms, like that. Whereas, socio-economic capacity means most of the disasters people suffer from their greatest losses in their physical or material realms. So, such rich people have their capacity to recover soon because of their wealth. So, socio-economic conditions deals here. So, whoever having high social economic, they will recover very soon. So, whoever having less economic, they have to take some more time. So, for that again government and NGOs will help to the peoples. Then what is the risk? Risk is the measures of the expected losses due to the hazards event occurring in the given area over a specific time period. Risk is also the function of probability of a particular hazards event and the losses which would cause. After the risk, now I will tell you about the disaster managements, overall disaster managements. So, once all of you know what is disaster, what are the different types of disasters, what we do, like that. So, now we go to the disaster managements. So, once disaster occurred means first what we do means we have to preparedness. So, we first educate the people, we gave the preparedness before disasters, we need a preparedness. After that mitigations, how we can mitigate the people. Then third, recovery. Then finally, we will get a response. So, what is a preparedness means? Activities prior to the disaster. For example, preparedness plans, as I told earlier lectures. For example, people those who are living very near to the coastlines, that is a vulnerability. So, we the people, most of the geologists or government or some NGOs go to the people and ask them, do not construct your house very close to the shorelines. That means, as per the government rule, construction of house in the coastline below 200 meter means that is restricted. So, people cannot know how much this, where is the locations to construct the house. So, for that geology people what they do, they prepare the map using remote sensing and GIS, then they submit the map to the planning commission of the government of India. So, for that they have go to the ground truth area, they have find the landform features, coastal landform features, they have prepared the land use and land mapping the land use and land pattern areas. For example, up to this area is beach, this area is dune, this area is beach ridges, this area is swale. So, like that they have to identify the location of coastal landforms, then using the Google Earth map and satellite imageries, they have draw the map, then they submitted up to this area is a beach ridge area. So, construction of house away from beach ridge area is very safe. So, before disaster we give the preparedness. So, preparedness means preparing the plans and also some exercise for training. So, most of the coastal land areas people cannot aware about what is tsunami. For example, 2004, before 2004, most of the peoples in the coastal areas, not only the coastal areas, in general they do not know the term what is tsunami. So, after that only they have some awareness about the tsunami. After the tsunami hit, most of the people know the term about tsunami. So, that means there is a lack of awareness in the education. So, people go to that coastal areas and educate the peoples about the basic needs, about the general informations, what is earthquake, how tsunami will come, what we do after the earthquake will come, if the flood will come what you have to do, cyclone will come what you have to do, like that we give some, we have to educate the peoples. So, that is called preparedness. So, first thing is preparedness, warning systems. Even in foreign countries like Japan, they have a signals, siren signals. Once tsunami comes or any other will come, they have give some alarms in the coastal areas. Automatically people run away from that area and go to the other high elevation areas. So, like that we give some preparedness, and then response, that is called activities during the disaster. So, public warning systems, emergency operations, search and rescues, that is called response. Then recovery, that is activities following the disaster. So, once disaster happen, so we give some response, people go there, give medicines, like that. Not only we are doing that only. So, we have to go, we have to give some temporary houses, we have to construct the house and ask the people to settle in that areas. And also we give some claims processing and grants, long term medical care, and also counseling. Counseling is very much important. Most of the child, they cannot easily recover from that hazardous conditions. So, the people like NGOs and government, other sectors, they will first motivate the young students, and also for counselings. Apart from this, they give the mitigations. Mitigations means activities that reduce the effects of disasters, like building codes and zoning, vulnerability analysis, public educations. So, these are all the basic things of disaster management. So, we have a cycle. we called as a disaster cycle. So, disaster risk management cycles, that includes some total of all activities, programs, measures that can be taken before, during and after the disasters, so that we can avoid the disaster and also some hazards, and also we reduce the impact and recover from its losses. That is very much important. Then what do you mean by disaster management cycle? If you see here this diagram, this is called disaster management cycle. So, first thing is prevention, second one is transition, then third one is recovery. So, like that. So, prevention means we have threat, we have early warning system, we have preparedness, we have mitigations, we have preventions, we have constructions. So, all this you need before the disasters. Then transition means during disaster what happens, some impact will be occurred. So, disaster periods. So, we give some relief, we give some aids, we give some priority rehabilitation, that is called transitions. After the disaster occurred, what do we do? We give some recovery, that is restoration, rehabilitation, reconstruction. So, these all comes under the disaster management cycle. So, there is a 3 stages of activities that is taken up during the disaster risk management. One is called pre-disaster, then another one is called during disaster, then third one is called post disasters. Then what do you mean by pre-disasters? That is activities taken to reduce the human and property losses by the potential hazards. So, during the disasters, as I already told, we go to that place, we can take some activities, for example, emergency response activities. So, we can construct the house, we give some medicines, we give some counselings. So, like that, that is called during the disaster. That is third one is after disaster, that is called post disasters. That means initiation takes in response to a disaster with the purpose to achieve early recovery and rehabilitations of the affected communities immediately after the disaster strikes. So, that is called response and recovery activities. So, again this is called a post disaster cycle. So, for what we have to do, first we have to plan, we have to activation, then we go for short term recovery, we give some counseling like that, then immediately we give medicines, then we cannot go away. What we have to do? We have to take the database of the people, then we give for long term benefits for them. For example, we have to construct the house to the people, then every year we go to that place and motivate the peoples, like that we have to give some recoveries, that is called long term development implementation. Then post disaster plan activities, these are all the post disaster redevelopment. Same thing here I have shown that pre disaster what you have to do, post disaster what you have to do. So, first thing is individual disaster response, then we give some relief, we give some immediate inventions. That means, we have to search, rescue, security, food, water, shelter, even sanitation, that is also important during the disaster times, even clothes, medical, trauma care, these are all the short term treatments, we called emergency response. Then post disaster recovery, we called as rehabilitations, for a month we give some help to the peoples, then long term benefit help like that. So, this is first one, preparedness. So, we have to give planning, prepared for the next disasters like that. Again all this comes under the disaster management cycle. So, managements. So, not only that, we give public awareness and training, that is one of the most critical components of the mitigation strategy. So, that means training with the help of officials and staffs to the various departments. Mostly they involved, you have to involve the state and district level peoples. So, they have sharing the information and methodology easily to the people. Next one is institutional mechanisms, that is national level, that is to strengthen and develop the capacity to undertake the disaster mitigation strategies. So, you need to emphasize the proactive and pre-disaster measures rather than post response. Again, we have a permanent administrative structures, so that you have to monitor the developmental activities across the departments and provide suggestions for necessary mitigation measures. These are all some mitigation measures, initiatives. You take some initiatives and resources for the mitigations based upon the availability of continued fundings. So, you give some mitigations, and also we need to develop mechanisms to provide the stable sources of funding for all mitigations. So, that suppose people affected with tsunami or any other disasters, what they have lost their jobs and other things. So, what we have to do, we give some training for training to the people for long term recovery. So, that is called incentives and resource for mitigation measures. Let us go for a break, we will continue later. Welcome back after the break. Apart from this, we give some resources. These are all short term resources. We give food for the peoples. Then I already told land use planning and regulations. So, wherever mostly disaster, I told cyclones, droughts, floods mostly occurred in the coastal areas. So, first we prepared the land use and land pattern map. So, once we prepare the map, from that map we gave to the planning commission of the Indian government. So, they will distribute the map to the state government, then only they will know that locations, this area is a safe zone, this area is unsafe zones. So, like that we have to prepare the land use land pattern map. So, that map prepared with the help of Survey of India's and also some geological agents, other peoples using from the remote sensing and GIS peoples. They have studied using with the help of satellites and also topo sheets and also by aerial photographs and also with the help of GIS softwares. They have prepared the map. Why I am telling this? We have a topo sheets, old topo sheets. So, nowadays the coastal landforms will be continuously changing. Once upon a time we have a spit, we have a some different swale like that, beach ridges, that will be not so located as such nowadays. That means there is a migrations, some spit can be developed, some place we have erosion, some place we have a depositions. So, like that there will be a continuous change in the coastal landform features. So, for that what we have to do means we go to the field, that is called ground truth verification. So, first we prepare the topo sheet maps, then we go to the field, then we find out this area, we measure the length and breadth of the beach ridge or beach or swale or dunes or cheniers like that. Then we take the using the GIS readings and theodolite mapping, then we come to the lab, again we redraw the map and match them with the earlier data with the recent data. Automatically we can find out how much deviation will be there. So, earlier beach ridge is up to 5 meters distance. Nowadays after 10-15 years there may be some deviations 6 meters distance. So, like that we have to compare the earlier data with the present data and we easily we can redraw the map, that is called a land use map. So, how much land can be used, this area are all useful for the land and this area are all river area, this area is coastal areas, like that we have easily prepared the map. So, we have to separate the industrial area from residential areas, maintaining the wetlands, buffer zones for floods, creation of public awareness of proper land practices and formation of land use policies. Like that we have to prepare the land use map. So, here I will show one example, that is the coastal land use map of Orissa. You can see the entire Orissa. Again they have prepared with here they are Orissa Remote Sensing Application Center Bhubaneswar and the Space Application Center ISRO Ahmedabad. They prepare this map using the remote sensing and GIS software. So, already they have easily tell about these are all the coastline areas, blue line indicates the river areas, like that green line is indicate the dense mangrove regions, and the patches dark brown patches, that are habitation and vegetations, then yellow are agricultural land. So, like that they have draw the map. So, this area is the land use map. So, once you prepare the land use map, easily people can know this area is suitable for construction of house, we have to leave the house from this place, construct the house away from the coast, like that. That is one of the method for prevention. Apart from this, hazard resistant and design constructions. So, nowadays as I told earlier, frequently earthquake, tsunami, cyclones, what happen easily the house construction, we here India mostly we construct the basement type of house, we give more concrete down and construct multi-store buildings. Automatically due to the tsunami and earthquake, all the house will be collapsed and heavy death loss will be more. For that what we do? We have to prepare the hazard resistant design and constructions. So, we have to build careful selection of sites and the building, that is important. The essential to promote the knowledge of disaster resistant construction techniques and practices among the engineers, architects and technical personnel. I will show one example here. See, you can see these are all earthquake resistance buildings. So, once you construct the house, we prepare the shear wall, transfer some of the quake energy from roofs and floors to building foundations. Not only that, you have to put a cross braced steel, they are placed between the stories of stiffen of buildings frame and absorb energy during the earthquake. So, once high energy will occur, the building will be disturbed, but it will be retain that energy. So, automatically the building never collapse. So, like that we have to mitigate for earthquakes. Not only that, like that we have to mitigate the flood, we have to mitigate the cyclone, we have to mitigate the drought, like that. Here how to mitigate the floods? The mitigation measures of flood include both structural and non-structural measures. The structural measures, again you have a reservoirs for impounding monsoon flows to be released in a regulated manner after the peak flood flow pass. Apart from this, prevention of overbank spilling by construction of embankment of flood walls. So, we have to construct the walls around the floods, and also improvement of flow conditions in channel and anti erosion measures. This is one type of flood mitigation measures. Like that, improve the drainage, you have to improve the drainage. Like that, non structural measures. So, these are all called flood management. So, once the river come, you have to construct the bond on both sides, automatically the flood will be not flow away from that place. So, flood plain managements, flood plain zonings, flood proofing, these are all some of the method for disaster preparedness. Not only that, you have to maintain the wetlands. So, once you maintain the wetlands, automatically the flood will be not go away from the places. So, wherever the ground flow and also the stream flow, everything can be stored. So, there may be stored and then it will go by the stream and finally, it goes to the sea places. So, we have to maintaining the wetlands also. Apart from this, what is the non-structural measures? That is forecasting and warning. We give the forecast and warning. So, flood will come, this much of flood will happen, like that, and also disaster relief, that is called flood fighting and public health measures, then flood insurance. Like that, cyclones also have to measures and mitigates. again I am telling about, you have to installation of early warning systems. How to installation of early warning systems? Along the coastlines, you have to fix the forecasting techniques that will help in early excavation of people in the storm surge areas. So, once storm surge will come, there will be forecast, today storm surge will come, it will be happen like that. Like that, even tsunami also easily, suppose in Indonesia tsunami will happen, means it will take some times to reach our Indian locations. So, meanwhile we give some warnings. So, from that warning people easily can excavate it. So, like that, this is one of the example. Like this we have to prevent the cyclones, and also we have to develop the shelter belt. Shelter belt means we have to construct the house, and also with the plantation of trees that can act as the effective wind and tide breakers. All of you know nowadays tsunami came throughout the coastal areas, but in Pichavaram and in Muthupet regions and also in some other Park Straits, the tsunami waves cannot enter. Why? What is the reason for that? Suppose here in Pichavaram and Muthupet, you have fully of mangrove forest. So, mangrove tree is there, that tree can easily withstand the waves. So, whatever the waves, tsunami waves or breaker waves coming fast to the shoreline, shallow regions to the land, mangrove, non-mangrove areas are easily affected, whereas the mangrove areas there the tsunami waves are protected, it will control the waves and the tsunami is not affected in particular areas. So, that we have to plantation the mangrove trees along the coastal areas, that is that is also one preparedness method for prevention of tsunami. And also windbreakers. So, we construct the plantation of trees, that is called windbreakers. Developing community cyclone shelters, that is also one of the important things. So, land use control and settlements, as already told, no residential industrial unit should be ideally permitted in the coastal belt of 5 kilometer from the sea. So, I already told 200 meter, but as per the coastal laws and management nowadays, they told up to 5 kilometers nobody can construct the houses from the sea. So, we call as vulnerable belt, and also no further growth of settlements in the regions should allowed, like that they are telling. So, disasters can be totally prevented. However, early warning systems, carefully planning and preparedness on the part of vulnerable community would help in minimizing the loss of life and property due to the disasters. Already I told again few examples of disasters in India. For example, you can see the earlier Great Bengal famine in 17th century 1769 to 1770, the third of the populations precised, like that Charles Shaw famine in 1783, Doj Bara or Skull famine in 1792, Northwestern Province famine of 1838, Northwest India famine of 1861, Bengal and Orissa 1866, Rajputana famine in 1869 and also 1943. These are all the disaster period, earlier disasters, and also droughts, they start earlier also from 1965, 72, 79, 87 and till date. There are also vulnerability in India's, for example, 57 land that is vulnerable to earthquakes, 12 of which 12 is vulnerable to serve the severe earthquakes, and also 68 land is vulnerable to drought, 12% land is vulnerable to floods, 8% of land is vulnerable to cyclones. Apart from this, the natural disasters, some cities in India are also vulnerable to chemical and industrial disasters, that is called a man-made disasters. This map shows the flood hazard maps. You can see wherever the flood, that is a red color, these are all the habitat of flood affected by the flood regions in India, flood hazard maps. This area is called wind and cyclone hazard maps. You can see this. The very dark blue color is called very high damage risk zone, we called as A zones. So, like that there is a dark to light colors. The light color will show the low damage risk zones. So, this is for wind and cyclone hazard maps. This map shows the seismic activities from 180 AD to 2004. You can see the entire India, you can see seismic prone, but in center part there is very less. These are dot line indicate how much seismic activities occurred around all over the India and also in the world. So, I have shown the cyclone prone areas, earthquake prone areas and also wind prone areas. So, with this I conclude my lecture, and today we have learned about the disaster management cycles and 3 stages of activities that are taken up within the disasters risk managements, and also I have tell about the earthquake, flood, drought, cyclone, tsunami mitigations and the management measures with few Indian examples. So, with this few questions I would share with you: what is risk, what is the disaster management cycle, what do you mean by pre-disaster and post-disaster management, explain land use control and settlement planning, explain about the hazard resistant design construction, explain about floods and mitigation measures. Thank you.